the online space can put everyone in loggerheads. And one of the biggest thing that we should endeavor to have is clarity, because clarity is one of the things that will unite everyone. If I throw an apple to the sky, it will come down and we can all agree that's gravity, right? So there's clarity in concepts, there's clarity in function, as well as clarity in information. And that brings the question of transparency. If everyone knows the good and the bad, and we all agree that we want to push this ahead, then that would remove every form of barrier of misinformation, as well as gaps in information, so long as there's that agreement in the information, yeah.
Thank you. Mushiri, about influencers, are you doing it for the money or for common good? Does it align with your values when you're doing it? And how do we draw that line?
I'm going to say it plainly and clearly. In the influencing space, because we're in I would say we are in a dystopian era where companies, institutions, parastatals, science communities, or even individuals are at liberty to pay individuals on social media to spread whatever manner of information. So when we are discussing about the war on science, it's literal war on science. It's literal war on science. And, you know, as she said, it really boils down to your values. The kind of, because I, as a social media personality, I know there are people who don't just follow me for the kind of content I post. There are people who follow me for the kind of values and principles I stand for. And when it comes to us, the science community, we can get really rigid at times because we have the knowledge and the facts, and we can box ourselves in that space, and we forget how to connect with the outside community. And we, the science community, have to stop seeing social media as a battlefield. We have to see it as a bridge to connect people to the truth, to healing, to community, and to the actual facts. We have to engage social media experts and influencers on how to deliver and on how to know the atmosphere. And I have an interest in learning about the human body. So I read a lot about the human body. I did biomedical science in university. So I started a community called the Becoming Room on social media, where we talk about the human body, we talk about human health, but not in the traditional sense, in a really poetic manner. And this is the kind of content that people really want to engage with this kind of content, especially now that the biggest population of Africans are youth. We, the science community, have to come up with ways on how we can meet non-science people in the middle, on how we can get them to connect with the facts and the truths without it being misinformation and disinformation. Yeah.
So, and you want to say something about that before we come to the...
Yes, just in addition to what he says, I think we saw a campaign in South Africa, the Justice for Tsweswe, and that really sparked a very large conversations on how come influencers can jump on a train and make it successful and it becomes a worldwide thing. However, one of the key things is the values that those influencers have. So you cannot, it's easy to say, I can't find an influencer who's willing to push this campaign or initiative. However, if you look at the values they give, it will be a much easier search, because you look for influencers that not only post dance videos, but they value communal health. Those are the right influencers to speak to. If you find influencers who maybe love cooking and they have cooking TikToks online, but they value maybe animal health, those are the right individuals to target. So it's all based on values more than what they share on their social media pages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll come to you, Dr. Tarawali. He spoke about rigidity. Do you feel like scientists are a bit rigid? And I'll give an example of mainstream media. When we talk about digital disruptions, we are worst hits. As scientists, have you accepted that fact that the world has shifted to social media? Have you changed your way of thinking, of engaging? Are you doing things differently? It doesn't have to be one-on-one. As Professor said, he doesn't want to be on social media engaging people on a daily basis. But how differently are you engaging those you're targeting? Because you're doing the science. So how do you ensure that information is coming out? How do you engage them in this era of technology? Yes, you don't have to be there every day, but how else can you do it?
Yeah, I think absolutely, Prof. We don't want to be answering TikTok or whatever every day, but we need some who can, and we need them to be trusted voices. One of the things that we're doing is being quite intentional about not just writing, say, for us at least, a research proposal, and we put all the scientists and the test tubes and whatever it might be that we need. We need to include in that resources for communication and advocacy. Not to say that the scientist has to do it. We might need to pay for one of our other colleagues in that space to do that. For livestock, one of the things we've been very intentional about is getting ourselves into the spaces that are not talking about livestock. We realized we're very good at sitting in a room with livestock people and agreeing with each other. What a surprise. But we need to be in the space of environment, of nutrition, of food security, etc. Those big things that people care about, and for which livestock or crops or whatever it might be, need to be framed to contribute to. And absolutely, this is definitely not just about Kenya. This is, as I said, using that case as a springboard to get us all to think much more carefully, much more intentionally about this. We heard yesterday somebody mentioned trust gaps, I think, and picking up on what Mike said, I think we have an opportunity to be deliberate about building trust bridges.
Yeah, and to definitely come to that, how do we win back public trust when we find ourselves in a situation like this? And I'll come to you, Marianne, Dr. Marianne. He mentioned that the president literally took a bullet for you. It was a sign of political will. Let's talk about these directives that are issued by the president. Do we understand them? In what form do we implement them? Who implements them?
Thank you for that, Zubeida. So we do have the presidential directives. This is a technical matter that's supposed to be implemented by the technical wing. That is the Directorate of Veterinary Services. We had a strategy. We had a strategy 2018 to 2028, an FMD control strategy, and also a PPR strategy that was supposed to be implemented. But given 2018 to 2024, we had not done much on that strategy. So even as the president proclaimed that we are supposed to be having a vaccination campaign nationwide, we saw that as an opportunity. And given that Kenya is a devolved kind of government, we have 47 county governments in Kenya. And we have to move across all those counties and ensure that all the animals, to give you a rough estimate, Kenya has about 70 million, 22 million cattle, 50 million sheep and goats to be vaccinated against the same, against the two diseases, FMD and PPR. So how do we go ahead and implement this? We have the implementation bit of it, of which I've mentioned. We have the logistics, we do have the resources, we have the manpower at the level of each and every county. So to us, that was the problem at that particular point in time. Because as much as the president has proclaimed that, we need to look for funds. We need to look for funds from wherever, are they partners, donors, so that we can be able to implement this. We were not ready for that, but it was a catch-22 situation. We have to do what has been said at that particular point in time. Comparing that maybe with the COVID-19, as the gentleman maybe put it, the COVID-19 was a global issue. And we could see the impact of that. There are people dying, their borders are being closed, airports are closed, and all that. So what do? We didn't have a choice, because if we are not going to do as per the instructions, then we are going to be wiped out. Compare that with FMD. I've been living with my animals all this time. Maybe I've not vaccinated them. And fair enough, or maybe by chance, they have not died. So are you going to push this down my throat? Of course not. You are not going to do that. So the two scenarios are not comparable. And given that at DBS, maybe for your information, I'm a veterinarian, and I am the communication person. So you can imagine technical and the science communication, maybe no kind of background. When I'm talking to Mike, we are 2 worlds apart. We don't, and social media and myself, maybe I'll need to learn more from the Gen Zs. Maybe.
And maybe
an interesting case scenario, but at the end of the day, it's too contextualized to Kenya, with no budding international touches for us to reference to. But I just want to challenge it. I think all of us, the director and the media, have heard of presidential directives. There's a reason I think they are called presidential directives, not presidential consultations. And it might be interesting to share in the context of Kenya, because this is really a Kenya story. What is your understanding of a presidential directives? What form do you accept it? What form do you want it to come to you? And to the Director of Veterinary Services, I think everybody has done a bit of decent veterinary work ahead the word political will. And it will be interesting to me to maybe do this in a comparative analysis with COVID. Because all the presidents who lost elections were the ones who were pushing their directors of health to make noise. Yeah? What is your acceptance of political will? Because to me, Ruto was doing exactly what I want my president to do. Thank you.
Thank you. We come to Professor.
So this came in a time where the entire Kenya had one distinct voice of he must go, he means the specific president. And that meant any initiative he touches would be met with the same opposition. The unfortunate thing is that even it being an innocent campaign, because we have about more than 80% vaccination of birds, that's poultry, less than 3% of ruminants. He meant well. The campaign could have meant well. However, the timing and the individual was actually wrong. Yeah, the motivation was right in that he would find leniency with the people, he would find a new promise to give. However, the timing, as well as he himself being the person to deliver that message, was wrong. Because if you think about it, such proclamations need a communication strategy. Such proclamations need the right people on the table to not only put information on a wall and decide our campaign is going to be called, let's say, Vaccination Drive 2025, and we're going to roll it out with banners and billboards. It has to be well thought, organizing the right individuals on the team, even influencers. I think at the moment, the one successful campaign which was organic, and it was led by influencers in Kenya, was the End Femicide campaign. It was calling for the end of the brutal killing of women in Kenya. And no politician had to go and put scribbles on the wall and say, we are going to follow this campaign. It was a grassroots led, and it had a very good strategy. So I think the individual, the timing, as well as the strategy behind it was the one that failed this initiative.
Yeah, and maybe before I go to the audience, I see, yeah, she's very ready to ask the question. I come to you, Dr. Tarawali. Do you think, and I started by asking you whether you are on TikTok, do you think scientists should be on social media? Do you think scientists should engage actively on social media? And how do we protect them? And do you think if the experts were there, things would have been different? They would have countered the misinformation, things would be different. They would have protected the messenger and protected the fields as well.
I think it's really essential that scientists are much, much more visible than at present. We've been very, very poor as scientists, and perhaps sometimes with good reason. We heard the colleague this morning from Botswana explain how when he was very transparent, he got attacked, he got death threats, yeah. So we've been very poor in that sense. I think one of the reasons why as well is that science is usually dealing with complexity, with nuance, with diversity, and the tools we're trying to use, as we just heard, it's bite-sized information. Simple, meaningful, true, practical, relevant to different classes of individuals. That's not typically how many scientists like to communicate. They want to write a research paper. Here's the materials and methods. We started here and we blah, blah, blah. So we really need to not necessarily have all the scientists visible, but we need some who perhaps could be trained, upskilled, and so on, to be visible and to be trusted. Just yesterday, I heard this really interesting stat, that in the US, where we know some of these trends have gone all over the place, 75% of people surveyed could not name a living scientist. Scientists are a bit invisible. So a few of them tried Einstein, apparently, but that creates a vacuum for bad actors to come in. Bad news. It's also a responsibility, because we're doing our science, we like to say at ILRI, we do research with the end in mind. If we want to reach that, we've got to communicate about it. And people are investing in us to do science that will do that. So even our responsibility to make sure that the money invested in science does what it's supposed to. It's a moral and professional duty as well. Now, I think we, in many cases, most cases, including mine, we've got a long way to go to make that happen. But I think we have to be much more serious about it.